What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? It's your boy Goblin, and today we're coming in with a hoot and a holler. I've been talking about this video on Instagram and Twitter for a little while now, and I decided that, what originally started out as like a joke idea I wanted to make into a real series. I kind of joked like, oh, I make life story videos. What if I just told my life story? Because I always get comments that are like, Goblin, no one gives a fuck. We don't want to hear your life story. So fuck y'all. I'm making a life story, quite literally. But yeah, hope you guys do enjoy this series. This is going to be a multiple part kind of thing. Don't forget to drop a like if you do. And also hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat. All that stuff will be in the description below. Also, I got a PlayStation again for like the 9th time. I probably should stop selling my PlayStation, but like I buy it to play one game and then I get bored and sell it every single time. But this time it's different. So my PSN name will be in the description and you guys can hit me up on there and add me. But either way, let's dive right into it. So part one, this is going to be all about elementary school me. So from birth up to that point. So I'm not going to talk too much about when I was like a baby. I mean, I was born January 2nd, 99. I'm 19 years old now. I grew up originally for like my first year in Chicago in the city. And then my parents moved to the suburbs. And my parents had a really like rocky relationship. They got divorced when I was really young. I think I was like 3 years old when they got divorced. So I don't remember my parents being together very much. Because what ended up happening was when my parents got divorced, my mom moved to a separate suburb than my dad and got her own little like townhouse kind of thing. And she had like primary custody of me ever since I was really little. And that meant, I went to the schools in her area and her school district and I saw my dad about once or twice a week usually. And my dad was an interesting guy. I'm much closer to my mom than I am with my dad. And I always really have been. And recent being, my dad and we rarely throughout my life really saw very eye to eye. He was very different than me. He was a very angry guy. He would freak out about really minor things, and it scared me as a little kid. And what he would do is, like, for example, when I was really little in like first grade, I remember I failed the test. I got a letter sent home because I was misbehaving one time too, and he would like yell and stomp his foot and like throw things, never like hurt me directly, but he'd like throw things, break things, ground me, yell, stomp his feet, always like break things. That was a big thing. He'd slam doors, he'd slam things against the wall all the time. He was an interesting guy. And that like scared the shit out of me sometimes when I was a little kid, because he had road rage too. I remember it was pretty bad. Like we'd be driving, he'd be going like 20 over the speed limit, like tailgating people, honking, stomping his feet, like slamming his hands on the dash, yelling, just being kind of like intimidating around me. And it scared me as a little kid. And when he would do that directed at me and take his anger out towards me and throw things around me and yell at me, and when I would get a letter home, what he would do is he would always do that, scare the shit out of me, slam my door, whatever, and take something away, and then he would always make up for it with money. He would always do something like monetary to apologize. He'd always go buy me a new game or go buy me something or give me money to buy something. Even when I was a really, really young kid, he'd like take me to GameStop and let me buy games, because, ever since I was in like, oh God, maybe even like preschool, if not kindergarten, I always played a fuck ton of video games. I was on the PlayStation 1. I would run it up on Crash Bandicoot and all that shit. It was like my little hobby that I did all day, every day, with all my free time, but he would always make up for acting that way around me with money. So at a really young age, I made the connection that like money is like happiness, because my dad would be like that all the time and kind of like scare me like that. Even when it wasn't directed at me, just all the time. It would happen very frequently, So it kind of, when I was really young, I made that connection like, oh, money is happiness. Getting things is, good. It makes me happy. That's what like helps. Money is a great thing. So throughout my whole life, that's kind of been like something that's just implanted in my mind, just that money equals happiness. Money equals good things. Money equals success. Money is like thumbs up. You always got to have money over everything, because I never had that emotional connection with my dad. I never really had like and I never really almost felt of him as like a parent figure. He was more of just like around, but I just kind of never really had that like emotional connection with either of my parents, but way more so my dad. But I had that money connection. So, growing up as a little kid, throughout elementary school, I always liked money. I would always try to be a little entrepreneur. I had the lemonade stand. I would sell things. I'd write stories in fourth grade and staple them all together and sell them to kids. And they were really funny. And I always liked being, kind of an entertainer. I always liked making people laugh, like made me feel good, which is partially why I enjoy doing YouTube. It's also that kind of social aspect of me. I fucking hate school, and I always have, even as a little kid, excuse me, despite the fact that I was a really good student. I always hated school. And it just so happened that I was smart enough as a little kid to succeed in school, until middle school rolled around, but I'll get to that later. But anyways, I always did really well, but I hated school, but I loved the social aspect of it. I always loved making friends, talking to people, being entertaining, being funny. I was constantly viewed as like the class clown. I signed up for the football team and I sucked ass when I played football, but I really enjoyed it because I had a bunch of friends on the team who I would always make laugh. I'd always be able to dick around with them and have a good time. And I do that in class all day. Every time there was a parent-teacher conference that my mom or my dad attended, the teacher would always say, yeah, he talks too much. And, that's just kind of how I was. I just liked speaking to people, I just liked socializing. I was outgoing. I wasn't like a dickhead to anybody, I was really nice to everybody, but, I had my yo mama diss-offs back in third grade. You couldn't catch me lacking on those, dude. Nobody could ever catch me lacking on the yo mama diss-offs back in like third grade. If y'all ever had those jokes when you were little kids that you tell each other, like your mom's so fat, she's a whale or whatever stupid bullshit you were spewing back then, there was that one kid who was an absolute god tier yo mama legend, and I was pretty up there. I'll tell you, on the leaderboards, I was up there. I was really clouded up back then. But throughout elementary school, I had that social aspect of me that made me have a lot of friends, but I didn't hang out with those friends outside of school very much. Out of school, I had maybe 2 friends that I ever hung out with, and that's because I always like to rather go home and play video games on my own than go out with friends. And that was whether I was at my dad's house or my mom's house, because I'd see my dad every Tuesday and then every other weekend. I'd go over for the night on Tuesday, and then every other weekend of every month I'd go over and see him. And then holidays, it was kind of random, really. But no matter whose house I was at, whether it was my mom's closer to all my friends, I'd just stay home and play PlayStation or play Xbox or play my Nintendo DS or whatever the fuck I played. And since both of my parents were divorced, they, of course, both had to work. And over the summers, I didn't really get to stay home very much because I had to go to summer camp because I wasn't quite old enough to stay home alone until I got to like 5th grade when my parents finally trusted me. So from kindergarten all the way up to 4th grade, every summer I spent like 10 hours a day at this shitty like daycare center where all I did all day was stay inside and like sneak in my Nintendo DS and try to play it. And I remember there was this one kid who always had Grand Theft Auto on his PSP. Whoever the little kids back then, if y'all remember elementary school, if you guys are around my age, you remember the PSP and the DS? The kids who had the PSPs were always savages. They were always goons, bro. They had that Grand Theft Auto. T-rated games, M-rated games, they run that shit. Me, I was only allowed to play like Pokemon and like Nintendogs and that stupid shit. I would have to play off my homie's PSP if I wanted to get that Grand Theft Auto action. But, I spent a lot of time at daycare, and there was a lot of different kids I met there, and I was the same way. I like to be friends with everybody, be funny, be social, be outgoing, but it took away a lot of, like, alone time that I had until I was older, and, that kind of impacted my life because as I grew older, I became a very different person than I was, when I was young, when I am describing myself how I was in these times in my life in elementary school. I was really, really different than I became and what I am today, so I want to kind of stress that. This was before really anything. I just had a really bad relationship with my dad, and it kind of affected me and changed who I was, changed who I was as a person and made me that money connection. And that comes way more into impact later into my life. That comes more into effect around like late middle school and all the way up to now, really. That was a driving force of a lot of my life, and good and bad. That was a huge part of later things. But throughout elementary school, that's just kind of what I was like. That's kind of how I grew up and how I, originally Little Goblin was operating. I wasn't really a bad kid back then. I didn't like steal things. I didn't get in fights. I didn't do those kind of things. I just kind of chilled and did my thing. I remember one time in like second grade, some girl who was also in second grade showed me her boobs, and that was really weird. And that was really fucking weird. I'll tell you that. Like, that was kind of funky. So like, I did things like that, but like not like, mean things or like bad things. I was still a really well-behaved kid for the most part, besides my occasional tomfoolery, my little back on my bullshit back then, like that kind of stuff. And, I got sent to the office a lot and I got in trouble a lot, but not like serious, like suspended or hurting other kids trouble. It was just like, yeah, he's talking too much. Yeah, he showed another kid a picture of boobs he found online. Yeah, he, said too many yo mama jokes and made this kid cry, things like that. But like not terrible things, So I was just kind of your average kid who deep down was like really nerdy and liked playing a bunch of video games. So that's kind of my elementary school years. And I'm going to break this up into parts that are middle school / early high school, and then high school to current. So it's going to be probably like a 3-part series, but this was part 1. Hope you guys did enjoy. Don't forget to drop a like if you did, and part 2 is going to be out tomorrow. So thank you guys for watching. Really do appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.